for the Board of Education in the Fairfax County here in the D.C. area. And her topic will be education.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى أهله وصحبه أجمعين. I need to talk louder? Okay. I'm a bit short. I'm very happy that I was asked to speak today about education because I believe that education is one of the most important areas that Muslims have to address. And while our objective, our final objective, is not just to become part of the system that we experience now and that we see, our final objective is to create our own Islamic systems, and not only create Islamic systems for Muslims, but to look at all the other people who are sharing this country with us as potential Muslims. And if we look at them as potential Muslims and feel that we have the obligation, which Allah has told us, to try to bring them into the same style of thinking, into the same way of behaving, into the same objectives that we have, then we have to have some way that we can communicate with them and some way we can work with them. And in that long-range process of making America Muslim, all of America Muslim, then we have to have some actual short-range goals. We have to have some way of dealing with them and know how we're going to deal with them and in which ways, and be very calculated about it, or else we will not accomplish our goals. Is education political? Yes, it is. Education is extremely political because it shapes our minds, it shapes our idea of who we are and what we are, it shapes our ideas of what we can be. Yesterday when I was listening to one of the other speakers, I became amused because it reminded me of a situation with my own little daughter. It wasn't a speaker, actually. It was a person who stood up from the audience and said, "We're not American, we're Muslim." Well, I've always brought my children up, alhamdulillah, to think of themselves first, last, and always as Muslim. When we lived overseas in a Muslim country, I let them identify themselves as Muslims. And we lived there for 10 years. When we came back a year ago, my little daughter, who's in 2nd grade, kept saying to her teacher, "I'm not American, I'm Muslim." And after a while, I started getting notes coming home saying, "What does she mean?" You know? And I got the same sort of notes from the school where we were overseas in a Muslim country, so-called Muslim country. The principal said, "What does she mean?" And she was in a Muslim country. And they would say, "Well, you're American, right?" She said, "No, I'm Muslim." And the principal here said the same thing. That shows that we have similar kinds of problems in approaching the field of education, whether we're living in a so-called Muslim country or whether we're living here in the United States. 6 months later, my daughter came to me and said, "Is there another thing that we're called American?" You know, she still isn't quite sure about it. Alhamdulillah, she's still identifying herself as a Muslim. I wanted to show, first of all, what did the Prophet ﷺ do in Mecca and in Medina in terms of education. Education was a priority for the Prophet. On an individual level, he used to spend hours and hours and hours just discussing things with people, listening to their problems, listening to their questions, answering them, and on a personal level, every single Asr time, afternoon time, he spent with his family educating them. He did not say, "Well, I'm a leader now and I don't need to do that." He spent every single afternoon with his family, exclusively, teaching them. And I would like to ask how many of our Muslim fathers and Muslim husbands do that today? The most active ones among the Muslims say, "Well, I'm a leader now. I don't have time for my family." And if they're not a leader, they say, "That's what women are supposed to do." And they don't carry on that responsibility. The Prophet ﷺ was our best example. He spent 13 years in Mecca preparing minds. He spent 13 years preparing personalities. He spent 13 years developing a concept, and then he took it to Medina. And he carried it on there, and it was public, and it was established. And once he carried it on, and once he established it, he didn't leave it there. He continued to build it even to a better extent. Now, what did the Prophet do, alayhi salam, when he was in Medina? He had to deal not only with Muslims, but with pagans and with Jews. And he did use deferential treatment. He did use different kinds of treatment between the three groups. But he drew their focus to the fact that there is something called an Islamic State, and you are going to be a part and parcel of that Islamic State. Are we at that position now? We're not. Can we try to act as if there is nothing out there, there is no public school education going on? No, we can't. We are in the process of developing Islamic education for our children. And yes, all of us have the hope and dream, inshallah, of creating not only Islamic schools that cooperate with each other, but Islamic school systems that would span the country. That's where our further objective is. And we want to make those schools so good that the non-Muslims will be signing up in long lists to enter them because they're excellent. We want to be dedicated to excellence. But are we there yet? No. We're not. So in the meantime, what do we do with the millions of Muslim children who are going to public school? We've got to do something with them, and we've got to be involved in some way.